Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Leonard Marks, Director of the United States Information Agency.
Hello. On September 1, when I was appointed Director of the USIA, I wrote a letter to each one of you expressing the hope that you would take out a few moments and write suggestions for how the agency could more effectively operate. Since that time, I've received many ideas and very valuable suggestions on the improvement of our work. In that letter, I also expressed the hope that at some time soon I would have the opportunity of meeting you in person. With 12,000 persons scattered around the world, that's difficult. In Washington, I've had that opportunity of meeting many of the people who work with me. Soon, I hope to be able to visit the field and shake hands with a great many of you and have an opportunity to express to you my appreciation for the work that you're doing. Although I'm new to the agency, I've had a long exposure to the work that you're doing. Nearly 20 years ago, I developed an interest in the field of foreign broadcast activity, and since that time, I have traveled extensively as an American specialist. I made 2 tours, one to Turkey, Greece, India, another to Pakistan and Afghanistan. While there, I visited USIS posts and was processed by the field offices. I lived in the homes of many of our PAOs. I learned firsthand of the work that you're doing. I saw the adverse circumstances under which you must operate. At the same time, I saw the joy and the challenge which you face and the opportunities which you realize each day. I saw the tremendous effectiveness of some of the activities that we carry on throughout the world. I believe you're the unsung heroes of our agency. No matter what we do here in Washington, it is meaningless if the field doesn't carry out the responsibilities, and you're doing it, and doing it very effectively. I hope in the not-too-distant future that I'll have the chance of visiting many posts throughout the world and seeing you and expressing my appreciation, talking about our common problems. Next month, I've scheduled meetings in Beirut, New Delhi, and Bangkok. After the first of the year, I hope that I'll be able to visit the Far East and Africa. But until then, we'll just use this form of film greeting to say hello and become acquainted. All of us here in Washington realize the importance of the work that the field performs. We also know how vital our daily activity can be. We have no greater friend than the Vice President of the United States. And to show his recognition of the work that we're doing, he came to the Department of State Auditorium today to address our employees and make the Honor Awards. I wish that each of you could have been there. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible. So instead, we filmed his speech, and now the Vice President of the United States, Hubert H. Humphrey.
Thank you very much, Leonard Marks, the esteemed Director and Administrator of the USIA. Leonard, I just noticed this program. I hadn't been able to get a hold of a copy of it until now. It's one of the documents that's classified, and sometimes we don't get those as readily as we would like to. I am indeed very, very happy to participate in this program. If I were to select an agency that has long interested me and one to which I have felt a sense of kinship, it is this particular agency. As I listened to Mr. Marks introduce the administrative staff of USIA, I listened to a roll call of old friends and new friends, so that it is a special treat for me to be here. I gather that Well, I should say that I find that the meetings that I enjoy the most are the ones that I generally ask to be invited to. And I've been bothering the director of this agency for some time, saying, "No, why don't you get me over there sometime? Why don't you invite me to something?" And he has told me several times it wasn't necessary for me to be invited, but I'm just a sort of a Midwestern boy that felt that was good manners. You ought to wait until you were invited. And finally, the message got through. The voice of the Vice President was heard. And here I am. And I'm just having a good time, and I hope that you enjoy it too. One of the delights of my life is that I make a number of speeches. I'm never quite sure whether the audience likes them, but I like them. And and since there are a certain number of moments of anguish and pain in public life, you maybe occasionally have to find a moment of amusement and pleasure. And if it isn't afforded by someone else, you have to do it yourself. So this morning I'm a do-it-yourself man, and I'm going to expound for a little while on some of my thoughts relating to our programs of information. And I do want to, of course, compliment and commend each and every employee, each and every officer of this very important agency of our government upon the awards and the honors that you receive today. So, as I've written, I am indeed honored and pleased to participate in this ceremony, a ceremony that is held to honor quality in performance. The President has repeatedly reminded us that what this government needs and what this nation needs as a standard is excellence. The new Secretary of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, Mr. John Gardner, is known for his enunciation and articulation of the standard of excellence in education. Long before he came to this government, this was his hallmark. And Leonard Marks, in his professional career, is known for his commitment to professional excellence, high quality of performance. And I must say that a government that has the burdens of ours and a nation that has our responsibilities can settle for nothing less than excellence in every endeavor. This is what we're trying to teach people today, and we hope that we can find the motivation that inspires people to that quality of excellence. One of our greatest challenges is to seek successfully quality in our standards, quality in our aspirations, and quality in our lives. I guess all of us know that we live today in the midst of the most affluent society that man has ever known. Before I came to Washington, we used to just call that prosperous. We changed it to affluent. We are blessed with the riches of earth, with dynamic economic growth, and with a great multitude of material goods. But goods alone are not a sufficient goodness. No society can be truly great that rests its claim to enduring fame on mere abundance or mere affluence. So we must strive unceasingly to overcome injustice and inequality wherever we may find it, to combat and to conquer poverty and racial discrimination and any form of bigotry or intolerance, and to overcome the inadequacy or lack of education. This is what we mean when we say we must strive to create a society of opportunity. I believe that one of the most revealing signs of American life as to the quality of our character as a nation and a people is the fact that during a period when we have unprecedented and almost incredible wealth and power, that we have not turned inward in a sense of just self-indulgence, that we are still examining our lives individually and our life as a nation. Or to put it succinctly to you, we still have a conscience. We are concerned. And even with unparalleled and unequal strength, we have compassion. These are not signs of weakness, these are signs of strength. The only nation that dares to tell the truth about itself is a strong nation. And the only individual that dares to admit his limitations is a person or an individual that has strength of character, strength of mind, and at least some physical strength or physical quality. And I am so proud of the United States of America that we can openly recognize our limitations and try to do something about them. When we seek to cover over our mistakes, when we seek to deny our inadequacies, when we seek to refuse to see the weaknesses that may be evident in our society, that's the day that we are in trouble. I know there are those that feel that when you discuss your weaknesses in the open, that you reveal it to the enemy. Let me tell you, if you do not know it, the enemy already knows our weaknesses. The question is, do we? The enemy will exploit them. Our question before us is, will we correct them? And you cannot correct them if you deny them, or if you seek to avoid the fact of their existence. And therefore, I'm one that believes that a little self-examination and self-criticism, constructive criticism, is a healthy sign. President Johnson, early in his administration, defined the goals of this administration. And I believe in that speech, I think it was at Lansing, Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, defined the great society. And I use his words because the definition that he gave is the definition that is most fitting. He defined the great society as a place which honors creation for its own sake and for what it adds to the understanding of the race. A place where men are more concerned with the quality of their goals than the quantity of their goods. But most of all, the great society is not a safe harbor, a resting place, a final objective, a finished work. It is a challenge, constantly renewed, beckoning us towards a destiny where the meaning of our lives matches the marvelous products of our labor. That is good prose, and more significantly, it is good philosophy. And I would hope that we would, as Americans, take heed of those words, because it is so easy for us to become self-contented, so easy to be pleased with all that we're doing, to remember that this America and what it stands for is not a safe harbor, a resting place, a final objective, a finished work. We're a restless people, and we ought to be. And democracy is the great unfinished business of mankind, just as the quest for peace leaves work for every generation. I would hope, therefore, that you here in Washington and all of your colleagues abroad, including the more than 6,500 fine local associates who work side by side with them, share this concern for quality and effort. Certainly no one in the field of international information can seek a safe harbor or a resting place. This agency isn't identified with such commonplace standards. I want to commend all of you for your devotion to the task of telling America's story to men everywhere. What we are, what we do, where we stand, and what we stand for in international life, and for telling the story in the best traditions of our free and open society. And I might add that when we do tell this story, we're going to, each of us, tell it a little differently. And that's the blessing of it all, because the variety of expression, of interpretation, is the beauty of a free society. And the voices that will be heard may be different both in tone and content, because each of us sees our America in a little different way. There's been quite an argument about who discovered America, Christopher Columbus or Leif Erikson. Depends upon where I am as to the emphasis that I put upon that. I noticed when I said Leif Erikson, Burnett Anderson just snapped up just like that. But when I'm over in the White House, I have to beware of Jack Valenti. He takes it. But I'll tell you who I think discovered America. I think we discovered, each and every one of us, every day. I discover this America every time I move a foot and go to a different place. I hope to be in Nashville, Tennessee tonight. And each experience and each community is a new discovery. And I tell you this because in a very real sense, that's what we ought to be telling the people that we talk to around the world. If they really want to discover America, come see it. Or give us a moment. Lend me your ears. And maybe we can at least put down some indications or indicators as to the route of discovery. Now may you approach each day of your working lives with a new determination to more creatively use the many tools of communication at hand. The USIA and the people of USIA have the chance to be the great catalytic agents of democracy. For instance, there is the yet untapped potential of the American private sector. I want to say to government officials, don't for a single minute think that we are the country. We're just a small part of it, and thank goodness. We have a tendency when we compare what our government does as compared, let's say, to what the Soviet Union may do. And these are constant comparisons that are heard all over the world. We I think, in a sense, fool ourselves and misinform others when we try to compare what our government does as compared with the government of the Soviet Union does, because there the government is all. It is the total state. Here the government is a fraction of the community. It is but a part of it, a visible part, but I don't think the strong base. It is the reflection of the economy and of the society. So I say the American private sector is the untapped potential. Many business, agricultural, labor leaders, yes, many educators actually misunderstand the purposes of USIA and what it does. And as a result, I know that you've often found yourselves defending your work and your agency to them. What a pity. Not only should these people not be the critics, they should be allies. And I know that USIA is actively seeking such an alliance. The private resources in our society far outweigh those available through any government budget. The private sector, if properly aroused and utilized, activated, motivated, can multiply your capacity for communication many times over. And with fuller support from the private sector, we might not today be closing information libraries in countries where the United States is under propaganda attack. I'm a politician, and one of the things that I learned a long time ago is never take for granted any support that you have. Keep earning it every day. Spend a couple hours every night worrying about that you've lost it, and then spend 3 or 4 more hours contemplating how you can regain it. And when I hear some people in our government and in private life say, oh, there's really no need to do anything in this particular country, in that particular area, they ought to be for us already. Remember the famous old Alban Barkley story, what have you done for me lately? People do tend to forget unless you remind them. And some of us are good reminders. With better stimulation of this private sector, we may tomorrow be able to increase the number of American books, films and magazines, scientific and technical journals, photo exhibits, the media of democracy throughout the world. And those media can be increasingly available in places other than official USIA libraries. I'd like to call upon the great industries of America to make it their business, not only to show their wares and their products throughout the world, but to show their America. This same great industry that may be able to show its tractors, or its machine tools, or its chemicals, or its plastics, ought to also show the environment in which these great commodities and products are created. Demonstrate by photo, by film, by document, by pamphlet, by word, the social, political, economic environment in which these products are created. I think that's a part of good business as well as a part of good citizenship. I cannot overemphasize the need particularly for scientific and technical journals. In 2/3 of the world that is developing, not only are these publications badly needed there, but the very fact of our making them available gives evidence of our great respect for their desire for knowledge. Yesterday afternoon, it was my privilege to open the space panel in the International Cooperation Year program. I'm chairman of the Space Council. I'm no expert in this area, but deeply interested. And I mentioned that how we spend hundreds of millions of dollars in this country, privately and publicly, to train people from other countries in the fields of science. And they go back to their countries and their universities and they're disappointed. In fact, discontented because the laboratories are not there that they had here. The machines are not there. The computers are not there. The reactors are not there, or whatever it may be. And here we are, a country literally overloaded with them, trying to build new museums, if you please, to find places to store these old machines. I said, let's not only send the technical document, let's not only train the teachers and the scientists, let's also share with them the equipment. This is a part of United States information. I can tell you of many ambassadors that have come to me and asked me, how can we get a little of the equipment for the people that you're training? Because the man that is trained, the members of the intellectual group that come here and are studying our institutions of higher learning and go back to their countries and find no environment or no tools, I should say, to carry out the work that they had here in America, become discontented intellectuals, leaders of dissension and of trouble, rather than of progress and of partnership. So, as we need these publications, and as we need exchanges of personnel, we also need, I think, to take that other step where we provide some of the tools. We must be alert, too, to the great possibilities of the closed circuit and other television. I should be telling Leonard Marks about that. I know that he knows it, but education, after all, is essentially saturation. Most of us learn through osmosis. And there's such a competition today in the clatter and the noise of modern society for attention that I thought I'd just mention it to you in case you haven't heard. There are such things as televisions. And there are television receivers and television broadcasting equipment, and they ought to be used more and more. A nation that leads the world in television ought to have television as a part of its international communication system as no other people could ever dream of it. And if I had my way about it, it'd be a good deal more, because we desperately need this. I know the use that you are already making of radio receivers, but the time may lie ahead when we can leapfrog barriers of isolation and illiteracy through television to a degree unimagined today. I shall speak quite frankly about it. If we were quite as ingenious on getting radio receivers and transmitters to the multitudes of people for the purposes of information and education as we are in military assistance, or even in the extension and the use of our surplus grain products, I think we'd have made quite an impact already throughout the world for the cause of truth and freedom. But I've heard prominent officials in and out of this government argue about the cost of a little radio receiver for a little country or a big country, and I've gone to that same country and seen a $400,000 tank that somebody didn't know how to run sitting out in the desert. And I figured how many radio receivers that would have purchased. And I'm not so sure about those tanks. You ought to have heard me speak on this subject some time back. But we talk about it privately now. I haven't changed my point of view at all in these matters, I want you to know. And we're making steady progress. But I recall reading a book by that famous Chinese author Lin Yutang, and he said that he was a gadfly, a sort of catalytic agent, going around and stinging certain parts of the anatomy to get people into action. Well, I want to be a bit of a, if I might, of a gadfly. Some people are quite convinced of that already anyhow, but I happen to believe that we need to be occasionally awakened and stung, so to speak, into action. Re-examine what we're doing. That's the whole purpose of this International Cooperation Year Conference, to let people take a look at what we're doing in the government, in our country, to re-evaluate, reassess, sort out, cast off the obsolete, the unneeded, put to work new efforts and new ideas and new tools. Well, over the past several years, as I've said, I traveled in many countries, and I've seen personally the performance of our USIA people, often carried out under the most difficult of circumstances. And I know that sometimes mothers or fathers have to teach their own children those schools for them, that physical conditions are often far from easy, and that even the personal safety of entire families can be in jeopardy. The Joint United States Public Affairs Office in Vietnam, as well as individual USIS Vietnamese and American members of the staff out there, have been singled out today for agency awards, and rightly so. USIA has heavy responsibilities in Southeast Asia and in Vietnam in particular, and these are being carried out with imagination, determination, courage, and high distinction. For the battle in Vietnam is more than a military one. It'll never be won on the military field alone. In this conflict, the psychological factor, the question of belief, of loyalty, is the critical priority. This is what we mean when we say that the battle in Vietnam today must be won politically and socially, as well as militarily. Or should I put it this way, you can't win it politically or socially without winning it militarily, and you cannot win it militarily without winning it politically and socially. It's tied together. And I want to see this country emphasize this matter of belief and of loyalty and of program and of politics and of social structure as much as we emphasize the military. I want the world to know that we care about the lives of people. I want the world to know that we care about the future of a society. I want them to know that we have as much brain power as we have firepower, as much moral power as we have firepower, and as much courage and ideas as we have in the men on the battlefield. And this is what USIA can tell. It can tell the whole story. USIA in all of its operations, both in Washington and overseas, has become a significant factor, not only in the conduct of our foreign relations, but I think in the conditioning of our foreign policy. For many years now, a bipartisan consensus, both in Congress and in the executive branch, has agreed that the U.S. Information Agency must be a strong element in our total foreign affairs establishment. Only recently, when my friend Leonard Marks was sworn in as director, the President emphasized his belief in the importance of USIA, and again charged it to tell the truth about America to the people the world over. And when you tell the truth about us, there's so much good to be told. Oh, yes, occasionally a wart and a blemish shows up on the countenance of the American profile. But I submit to you that the truth of America is the story of hope. Of all the great information officers that history records, none was greater than Abraham Lincoln, who reminded us that America was the last best hope on earth, and who in that immortal second inaugural address spoke to us of the conscience of this nation and of its purpose, with malice towards none and with charity for all, but with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right. What a powerful message. And I think it has eternal truth, because truth is a good master. In fact, it is the best. When you tell the truth, you don't have to remember the details of the lie. It's so much easier, having been caught up in both on occasion. Now, finally, may I say this. Given its present rate of development, the possibility for man's communication with man promises to be almost unlimited in the years ahead. In the future, then, your responsibilities will be even greater than they are today. May we in the future heed the words of the late and beloved Ed Murrow, who also was director of this agency. And those words, I think, should be a message of guidance for each and every one of us. If truth must be our guide, then dreams must be our goal. To the hunger of those masses yearning to be free and to learn, to this sleeping giant now stirring, that is so much of the world, we shall say, we share your dreams. Let's do it. Let's share with God's people the dreams that each and every one of them have. And that is the dream of life, and of a life that is meaningful, a life of liberty, and of the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.